The Zephyrian fleet commander Vextal adjusted his neural interface as the reconnaissance data flowed into his consciousness. 27 ships, each the size of a small moon, hung in the void like predatory shadows against the starfield. His species had conquered 43 worlds in the past century, and each victory had been swift and decisive. The humans would be no different. Commander, his tactical officer Kryndos reported through their shared mental link, "We have located what appears to be a significant human military installation on the fourth planet of this system. Long-range scans indicate substantial infrastructure and defensive positions." Vextal's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Intelligence suggested that humanity had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and possessed primitive weapons technology. Their expansion into space was limited to a handful of systems, making them perfect targets for the Zephyrian Empire's continued growth. "Show me," Vextal commanded. A holographic display materialized before him, revealing a barren world designated as Kepler 442c by human astronomers. The planet's surface was scarred with what appeared to be massive military complexes, training facilities, and defensive installations. Thermal signatures indicated thousands of human personnel scattered across multiple bases. "This appears to be a major training facility," Kryndos observed. "Perfect for demonstrating our superiority before moving on to their more populated worlds." The Zephyrians had built their empire on psychological warfare as much as military might. Destroying a major military installation would send a clear message to humanity about their fate. It was a strategy that had worked perfectly with the Felorians, the Epsilon Collective, and dozens of other species now serving as slave labor in Zephyrian industrial complexes. Vextal studied the tactical readouts with growing confidence. The human base appeared to be conducting some sort of large-scale training exercise. Thousands of personnel were engaged in what looked like combat simulations across multiple continents. Their equipment readings suggested kinetic weapons, basic energy shields, and conventional propulsion systems. Nothing that posed a threat to Zephyrian technology. "Begin the assault," Vextal ordered. "Full deployment. I want this facility reduced to ash within 6 standard hours." The fleet moved with practiced precision. Zephyrian ships were marvels of engineering, their dark hulls absorbing electromagnetic radiation while advanced gravitational manipulators allowed for impossible maneuvers. Their weapons systems could crack moons, and their shields had never been penetrated by any known technology. As they approached Kepler 442c, the human installation seemed to notice their presence. Communication arrays activated, sending frantic transmissions across multiple frequencies. Vextal monitored these signals with amusement, noting the panic in human voices as they realized they were under attack. "Unknown vessels, this is Outpost Cerberus," came a transmission in broken galactic standard. "You are approaching a restricted military zone. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Vextal opened a general broadcast channel. His translator unit converted his words into crude human language. "I am Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species is now under our dominion. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick." The response surprised him. Instead of immediate capitulation or desperate pleading, there was a long pause before a different human voice responded. This one spoke with what sounded almost like amusement. "Zephyrian Empire, this is General Sarah Chan, commanding officer of Cerberus Station. I'm afraid we're going to have to decline your generous offer. In fact, I think you've just made a rather significant mistake." Vextal's confusion lasted only a moment before his tactical displays lit up with warnings. The primitive human installation was suddenly bristling with weapon systems that hadn't been there moments before. Massive railguns emerged from hidden positions, their targeting systems locking onto his ships with impossible precision. "Impossible," Kryndos whispered. "Those weapon signatures, they're beyond anything in our intelligence reports." More concerning were the energy readings now emanating from the planet's surface. What had appeared to be simple training facilities were revealing themselves as something far more sophisticated. Underground complexes were powering up, their energy signatures rivaling those of Zephyrian battlecruisers. "Evasive maneuvers," Vextal commanded, but it was already too late. The first salvo from Cerberus Station defied everything the Zephyrians understood about human technology. Massive projectiles, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, tore through space with devastating accuracy. 3 Zephyrian destroyers simply ceased to exist, their shields and armor offering no more protection than tissue paper. The railgun rounds were followed by something even more terrifying. Beams of coherent energy, far more advanced than anything in Zephyrian arsenals, reached across space to slice through ship hulls like they were made of butter. The energy weapons operated on principles that Vextal's science officers couldn't even begin to understand. Shields at 30%, his engineering officer reported. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. How are they penetrating our defenses? But the weapons fire was only the beginning. As Vextal watched in growing horror, the space around Kepler 442c began to fill with human vessels that hadn't been there moments before. Ships materialized from what appeared to be empty space, their stealth technology so advanced that Zephyrian sensors had completely failed to detect them. These weren't the primitive human ships from their intelligence reports. These vessels moved with fluid grace, their hulls rippling with what looked like living metal. They were smaller than Zephyrian ships but moved with impossible speed and agility, darting between railgun rounds and energy beams like dancers performing an elaborate routine. Where did they come from? Kryndos demanded. Our deep space sensors showed nothing. The answer came in the form of a new transmission from the planet's surface. General Chen's voice carried a tone of professional satisfaction that chilled Vextal to his core. Welcome to Exercise Iron Gauntlet, she announced. You've just wandered into the most comprehensive military training program in human space. What you're seeing isn't our frontier defense force. It's our training academy. The implications hit Vextal like a physical blow. If this was a training facility, what did that say about humanity's actual military capabilities? His intelligence services had completely misunderstood the nature of human expansion into space. They hadn't encountered a primitive species taking its first steps among the stars. They had stumbled into the territory of something far more dangerous. More human ships continued to decloak around the Zephyrian fleet. Vextal counted over 100 vessels, each one demonstrating technology that should have been impossible for such a young spacefaring civilization. Their movement patterns suggested not just superior technology but tactical sophistication that rivaled or exceeded Zephyrian military doctrine. Commander, his communications officer interrupted, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across human space. It appears our attack has triggered some sort of general alert. Vextal's tactical display updated with new information that made his blood run cold. The handful of systems that humanity supposedly controlled was expanding in real time as previously hidden installations revealed themselves. What had appeared to be a small, vulnerable civilization was unveiling itself as something much larger and more capable. The human ships weren't just defending the training facility. They were studying the Zephyrian fleet, analyzing their technology and tactics with disturbing efficiency. Vextal realized that his forces were being used as live training exercises for human military personnel. Sir, Kryndos reported, his voice tight with fear, we're receiving casualty reports from across the fleet. 7 ships destroyed, 12 heavily damaged. Their weapons are unlike anything we've encountered. They seem to bypass our shields entirely. The next wave of human attacks demonstrated even more advanced capabilities. Some ships fired projectiles that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, appearing directly inside Zephyrian hulls before detonating. Others used gravitational weapons that crushed entire sections of ships by manipulating local spacetime. But, perhaps most terrifying of all were the human pilots themselves. Vextal watched in fascination and horror as individual human fighters engaged his most experienced crews in personal combat. The humans moved their ships with an intuitive understanding of three-dimensional warfare that suggested extensive training in environments far more challenging than normal space combat. They're not fighting us, he realized with growing dread. They're playing with us. General Chen's voice crackled across the communication channel again. I should probably mention that Cerberus Station specializes in training our personnel for asymmetric warfare scenarios. You know, situations where we're outnumbered by technologically sophisticated opponents who underestimate human capabilities. Your arrival has provided an excellent practical exercise for our current class of graduates. The words were spoken with the casual tone of an instructor discussing a classroom assignment, but their meaning was unmistakable. The Zephyrian Empire, terror of 43 worlds, had just become a training exercise for human military cadets. Vextal's pride warred with his growing sense of self-preservation. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered its way across the galaxy by choosing battles they could win and avoiding conflicts with truly dangerous opponents. Everything about this situation screamed danger. All ships, he commanded, prepare for immediate withdrawal. Emergency jump protocols. But, as his fleet attempted to disengage, they discovered another unpleasant surprise. The spacer on Kepler 442c had been filled with some sort of interdiction field that prevented faster-than-light travel. They were trapped in normal space with an enemy that had just demonstrated overwhelming superiority in every aspect of warfare. Jump drives are non-functional, his engineering officer reported. We're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout local space. Something is preventing superluminal travel. The human ships pressed their advantage with devastating efficiency. They moved in perfect coordination, their attacks timed to exploit every weakness in Zephyrian formations. It was clear that they had studied Zephyrian tactics extensively and had developed specific countermeasures for every standard Imperial strategy. What made it worse was that the humans were clearly holding back. Their attacks were devastating but precisely targeted, designed to disable rather than destroy. They were capturing Zephyrian personnel for what could only be interrogation and intelligence gathering. Commander, came another transmission from the planet's surface, this time from a different human voice. This is Admiral Marcus Webb, Cerberus Station Strategic Command. We're prepared to discuss terms for your fleet's surrender. I should mention that we've already dispatched messages to your home territories. Your government will be receiving some interesting information about human capabilities very soon. The threat was clear. Not only had the Zephyrians failed in their attack, but their entire strategic position had been compromised. Human intelligence had clearly been watching the Empire for some time, gathering information and preparing for exactly this type of encounter. Vextal stared at his tactical displays as more human reinforcements continued to arrive. Ships that shouldn't exist, wielding technology that defied understanding, commanded by a species that had been dismissed as primitive and harmless. He was beginning to understand that the Zephyrian Empire had just encountered something that would fundamentally change the balance of power in this region of space. The question was no longer whether they could conquer humanity. The question was whether humanity would allow the Zephyrian Empire to continue existing. The communication channel crackled once more with General Chen's voice. Oh, and, Commander? You might be interested to know that Cerberus Station is just one of 17 similar training facilities in human space. I thought you should have that information for your reports. 17. The number hit Vextal like a physical blow. If this was what one human training facility could accomplish, what could their actual military forces do? How had his intelligence services missed something this significant? As his fleet continued to suffer losses from weapons that seemed to operate on scientific principles beyond Zephyrian understanding, Vextal realized that the Zephyrian Empire had just learned a hard lesson about the dangers of underestimating an opponent. The humans hadn't just defeated his attack. They had turned it into a learning experience for their military personnel while simultaneously demonstrating capabilities that would terrify every major power in the galaxy. In a single engagement, the balance of power had shifted in ways that would have consequences across dozens of star systems. And, somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible thought was beginning to form. If the humans possessed this level of technology and military sophistication, why had they allowed other species to believe they were primitive and vulnerable? What kind of long-term strategy required that level of deception? The answer to that question would have implications that reached far beyond this single battle. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the primary command center of Cerberus Station, watching the tactical display with professional satisfaction. The Zephyrian fleet was in complete disarray, their ships scattered and burning while human forces maintained perfect formation around them. What had begun as an unprovoked attack on a human installation had become the most comprehensive practical examination of alien military capabilities in recent history. Status report, Webb requested from his tactical coordinator, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim. 17 Zephyrian vessels destroyed, 8 heavily damaged and drifting, Kim reported. We've captured approximately 400 enemy personnel and recovered extensive technical samples from their destroyed ships. Casualty reports from our forces show 0 fatalities and minimal structural damage to station facilities. Webb nodded, though he wasn't surprised by the one-sided nature of the engagement. Cerberus Station had been designed specifically to test human military capabilities against technologically advanced opponents. The facility's defensive systems represented the cutting edge of human engineering, powered by discoveries that most alien civilizations couldn't even comprehend. The irony wasn't lost on him. The Zephyrians had attacked what they believed was a frontier outpost, not realizing they were assaulting humanity's premier training facility for asymmetric warfare. Every weapon, every defensive system, every tactical protocol at Cerberus had been designed with one purpose in mind: preparing human forces for conflicts against supposedly superior alien technology. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command and the outer colonies. News of the Zephyrian attack is spreading quickly through human space. Patch me through to Admiral Harrison," Webb instructed. Within moments, a holographic image of Earth's defense coordinator appeared before him. "Marcus," Admiral Harrison's voice carried a mixture of concern and anticipation. "I'm looking at preliminary reports from Cerberus. Is it true that the Zephyrians just attacked a training facility?" "Confirmed," Webb replied. "They arrived with 27 ships and demanded immediate surrender. When we declined, they opened fire on active training exercises. We responded according to Protocol 7. Harrison's expression grew grim. Protocol 7 was humanity's contingency plan for the day when their carefully maintained facade of technological primitiveness was finally challenged. Every human military installation had been preparing for this moment for decades. "How much did they see?" Harrison asked. "Everything," Webb admitted. "We couldn't maintain operational security while defending the station. They now know about our gravitational manipulation technology, our phased projectile systems, and our stealth capabilities. Our tactical analysis suggests they've also realized that our supposed handful of systems is significantly larger than advertised." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the Zephyrian fleet commander. Vextal's image appeared on the secondary display, his alien features showing clear signs of distress. "Human commanders," Vextal spoke through his translation system, "I request immediate negotiations for the withdrawal of my remaining forces. The Zephyrian Empire acknowledges that we have misunderstood the nature of human capabilities." Webb studied the alien commander for a moment before responding. "Commander Vextal, I'm afraid the situation has moved beyond simple withdrawal negotiations. Your attack on this facility has triggered certain protocols within human space. We're going to need to discuss the broader implications of this encounter." "What do you mean?" Vextal demanded. Admiral Harrison stepped forward, his image transmitted to the Zephyrian fleet. "Commander, I am Admiral Harrison, Earth Defense Coordinator. Your intelligence services have been monitoring human space for some time, haven't they? Gathering information about our supposedly primitive civilization?" Vextal's mandibles clicked nervously. "Standard reconnaissance. All spacefaring species conduct such activities." "Indeed," Harrison agreed. "The problem is that your intelligence was deliberately incomplete. Humanity has been maintaining what we call strategic ambiguity regarding our actual capabilities. Your attack on Cerberus Station has forced us to reveal technologies and resources that we preferred to keep secret. The implications were clear, and Vextal understood them immediately. You allowed us to believe you were weak." "We allowed everyone to believe we were weak," Harrison corrected. "The galaxy is full of aggressive species who view newcomers as either threats to be eliminated or resources to be exploited. By appearing primitive and vulnerable, we avoided unnecessary conflicts while we completed our preparations." Webb watched as this information sank in among the Zephyrian commanders. Their tactical displays would be showing them the true scope of human military installations throughout local space. Facilities that had been carefully hidden or disguised as civilian infrastructure were now revealing their true nature. The deception had been comprehensive and long-term. Human expansion into space had been deliberately portrayed as slow and cautious, with primitive technology and limited resources. In reality, human scientists had made breakthrough discoveries in physics and engineering that placed their civilization decades ahead of most galactic powers. "How long?" Vextal asked quietly. "How long have you been planning this deception?" "Since we first detected alien civilizations in this region of space," Harrison replied. "Our initial observations suggested that the galaxy was divided between aggressive imperial powers and subjugated client species. We decided that revealing our true capabilities too early would result in a coalition forming against us before we were ready. The strategy had been brilliant in its simplicity. By appearing weak, humanity had avoided the fate of species like the Thalorians and the Epsilon Collective. While the Zephyrian Empire had been conquering its neighbors, human scientists had been making revolutionary discoveries in physics and engineering. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Kim interrupted, "we're receiving reports from monitoring stations throughout human space. Multiple alien powers are adjusting their fleet positions in response to news of this engagement." Webb wasn't surprised. The revelation of human military capabilities would send shockwaves throughout the galactic community. Species that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant would suddenly be forced to re-evaluate their strategic positions. "What are your intentions regarding my fleet?" Vextal asked. "That depends," Harrison replied, "on the Zephyrian Empire's willingness to engage in meaningful negotiations. Your government has been expanding aggressively for over a century. That expansion has brought you into contact with human territory. We need to discuss new boundaries and mutual recognition of sovereignty." The words were diplomatically phrased, but their meaning was unmistakable. The Zephyrian Empire's expansionist policies had just encountered an immovable obstacle. Humanity wasn't going to be conquered or intimidated into submission. I need to consult with the Imperial Council," Vextal admitted. "Of course," Harrison agreed. "We'll provide your fleet with temporary accommodations while those discussions take place. I should mention that we've prepared comprehensive briefing materials about human capabilities and territorial claims. I think your government will find them quite educational." As the transmission ended, Webb turned his attention to the broader implications of the day's events. The carefully maintained balance that had allowed humanity to expand and develop in relative peace was now shattered. Within days, every major power in the galaxy would know that humans possessed technology and military capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected. Admiral, his intelligence officer, approached with a concerned expression. "We're detecting increased communication traffic between several alien powers. The hegemony, the corporate sphere, and the collective alliance are all conducting emergency consultations." Webb nodded grimly. The three largest power blocks in local space were undoubtedly trying to understand what the revelation of human capabilities meant for their own territorial ambitions. Some would see humanity as a potential ally, while others would view them as a threat to be eliminated before they could become stronger. "Initiate Protocol 8, Webb commanded. All human installations are to reveal their true defensive capabilities. If we're abandoning strategic ambiguity, we need to make sure everyone understands exactly what they're dealing with." Protocol 8 was the full revelation of human military infrastructure. Hidden bases throughout dozens of star systems would decloak, revealing the true extent of human territorial control. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroid mining operations would activate their targeting systems. Ships that had been masquerading as civilian transports would reveal their military configurations. The psychological impact would be enormous. Alien governments that had believed they understood the balance of power in local space would suddenly discover that a major new player had been operating under their noses for decades. "Sir," his tactical coordinator called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Luna shipyards. Admiral Chen reports that the Titan-class vessels are ready for deployment if needed." Webb felt a moment of satisfaction. The Titan-class ships represented humanity's most advanced military technology, vessels capable of operations that would seem like magic to most alien civilizations. Their existence had been one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. "Tell Admiral Chan to maintain readiness status but hold deployment until further notice," Webb instructed. "We want to demonstrate strength, not start a galactic war." The balance between deterrence and provocation would be crucial in the coming days. Humanity needed to make clear that they could defend themselves against any threat, while also leaving room for diplomatic solutions to emerging tensions. "Admiral Harrison," Webb contacted Earth Command again, "what's the status of Operation Looking Glass?" "All surveillance assets are active," Harrison replied. "We're monitoring every major fleet movement within 200 light-years. So far, most powers appear to be taking defensive positions while they assess the situation." Operation Looking Glass was humanity's comprehensive intelligence network throughout local space. For decades, human agents and monitoring systems had been gathering information about alien civilizations, their technology, their politics, and their military capabilities. The Zephyrian attack had just provided humanity with detailed tactical data about one of the galaxy's major military powers. "The hegemony is the immediate concern," Harrison continued. "Their territorial claims overlap significantly with our outer colonies. If they decide to test our capabilities directly, we could be looking at a major conflict. Webb studied the tactical displays showing alien fleet movements throughout local space. The next few days would be crucial in determining whether the revelation of human capabilities led to a new era of galactic stability or a devastating war involving multiple civilizations. "Sir," another communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Zephyrian High Command. They're requesting immediate negotiations at the highest level." "Route it through Earth Command," Webb instructed. The Zephyrian Empire's response to their military defeat would set the tone for how other powers approached humanity. If the Zephyrians could be convinced to negotiate rather than seek revenge, it might encourage other species to pursue diplomatic solutions. As he watched the final Zephyrian ships being escorted to temporary holding positions, Webb reflected on the magnitude of what had just occurred. In a single day, humanity had abandoned decades of carefully maintained deception and revealed itself as a major galactic power. The consequences of that revelation were still unfolding, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never again underestimate the species from a small blue planet on the edge of what had once been considered empty space. 3 days after the Cerberus Station incident, the emergency session of the Galactic Powers Assembly convened on the neutral station of Harmony Prime. Representatives from 17 major civilizations gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, each delegation struggling to process the implications of humanity's sudden revelation as a major galactic power. Ambassador Elena Vasquez represented humanity at the assembly, her calm demeanor masking the intensity of preparation that had gone into this moment. Behind her sat a team of human diplomats, scientists, and military advisors, each ready to address the questions and concerns that would inevitably arise from the galaxy's power brokers. The hegemony's representative, Prime Minister Kethvar, opened the session with barely concealed hostility. His species, the Korth, had built their dominion through military conquest and technological superiority. The revelation that humans possessed advanced capabilities threatened their entire strategic worldview. "We demand an explanation," Kethvar declared, his translated words carrying the weight of authority. "How long has humanity been deceiving the galactic community about their true nature? What other secrets are you hiding?" Ambassador Vasquez stood slowly, her movements deliberate and confident. The months of preparation for this day had included extensive psychological profiling of every major galactic leader. She knew exactly how to present humanity's position in terms that each species would understand and respect. "Prime Minister Kethvar," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the Assembly's translation systems, "humanity has never lied about our capabilities. We simply haven't volunteered information that wasn't requested. When our first exploration vessels encountered alien civilizations, we observed a galaxy dominated by aggressive expansionist powers. We made a strategic decision to develop our capabilities before announcing our presence." The corporate sphere's delegate, Executive Director Zixon, leaned forward with obvious concern. His species, the Valdras, had built their power through economic manipulation and resource control. Military conflict was expensive and disruptive to profitable operations. "The economic implications are staggering," Zixon pointed out. "Human trade agreements, resource extraction rights, territorial claims, everything needs to be renegotiated if your actual capabilities are significantly greater than represented." "We're prepared to discuss all existing agreements," Vasquez replied. "However, I should point out that humanity's technological advances have created opportunities for mutually beneficial partnerships that didn't exist under our previous arrangements." She activated a holographic display that showed detailed technical specifications for several human innovations. Gravitational manipulation technology, advanced materials science, and breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics represented potential benefits for species willing to engage in cooperative relationships with humanity. The Collective Alliance's speaker, Coordinator Thello SS, represented a group of smaller species that had banded together for mutual protection against larger powers. Her concern was more fundamental than economics or territory. "How do we know that humanity won't follow the same path as the hegemony or the Zephyrian Empire?" she asked. "Advanced capabilities often lead to expansionist ambitions. What guarantees can you provide that human technology won't be used for conquest?" Vasquez had expected this question and was prepared with a comprehensive answer. "Coordinator Thello SS, I'd like to present evidence of humanity's actual expansion patterns over the past 50 years. The holographic display updated to show a detailed map of human space. Rather than the aggressive territorial conquest that characterized most galactic powers, human expansion had followed a pattern of careful development and strategic positioning. colonies were established with extensive environmental protection measures, and contact with existing civilizations was managed through careful diplomatic protocols. As you can see, Vasquez explained, humanity's expansion has prioritized sustainable development and coexistence with neighboring species. We've had the military capability to pursue aggressive expansion for decades, but we've chosen not to exercise that option. Admiral Harrison appeared via secure transmission from Earth, adding military perspective to the diplomatic discussions. Members of the Assembly, I'd like to address concerns about human military capabilities directly. Yes, we possess advanced weapons and defensive systems. These capabilities were developed specifically to defend against the type of aggressive expansion that has characterized galactic politics for centuries. The Admiral's holographic image was accompanied by tactical displays showing human defensive installations throughout local space. The scope and sophistication of these facilities was staggering, but their positioning was clearly defensive rather than offensive in nature. Every human military facility is positioned to defend our territory or protect trade routes, Harrison continued. We have no interest in conquest or subjugation of other species. Our strategic doctrine is based on deterrence and mutual security. The Epsilon Collective's representative, Hive Speaker Mordin, posed a question that cut to the heart of galactic concerns. His species had been conquered by the Zephyrians decades earlier and existed as client states providing industrial labor. If humanity possessed these capabilities during our subjugation, why didn't you intervene? Why allow the Zephyrian Empire to continue its expansion if you could have stopped it? The question created uncomfortable silence in the assembly hall. Vasquez recognized the moral complexity of the issue but had prepared for this challenge as well. Hive Speaker Mordin, she replied carefully, humanity faced a difficult choice. Direct intervention in conflicts between established galactic powers would have revealed our capabilities before we were prepared for the consequences. However, I can assure you that the situation has changed. She activated another section of the holographic display, showing recent human diplomatic initiatives throughout Zephyrian space. In the past 72 hours, humanity has begun providing technical assistance and defensive systems to several species within the Zephyrian sphere of influence. The Empire's expansion is effectively ended. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just defeated a Zephyrian fleet, they had systematically undermined the Empire's ability to maintain control over its client species. The revelation suggested a level of strategic planning and capability that exceeded even the most pessimistic alien estimates. Prime Minister Kefvar's response was predictably hostile. You're describing the systematic destabilization of galactic power structures. The hegemony cannot accept this level of interference in established territorial arrangements. Admiral Harrison's image shifted to address the hegemony directly. Prime Minister, I think there's been a misunderstanding about humanity's intentions. We're not destabilizing existing power structures. We're offering an alternative to the cycle of conquest and subjugation that has characterized galactic politics. The Admiral's words were accompanied by detailed proposals for mutual security arrangements, technology sharing agreements, and cooperative exploration programs. The scope and sophistication of these proposals suggested that humanity had been planning this moment for decades. We're proposing a new model for galactic civilization, Harrison continued. One based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Species that choose to participate in this framework will benefit from advanced technology and mutual security guarantees. Those that prefer traditional territorial expansion will find that option significantly more difficult than it has been in the past. The threat was diplomatically phrased but unmistakable. Humanity possessed the capability to defend any species that chose cooperation over conquest, effectively ending the era of aggressive expansion that had defined galactic politics. Executive Director Zixon raised a practical concern that many delegates were considering. The economic disruption of such a fundamental change would be enormous. Established trade relationships, resource extraction agreements, industrial production, everything would need to be restructured. Which is why we're proposing a gradual transition period, Vasquez replied. Humanity is prepared to provide technical assistance and economic support to help species adapt to new arrangements. We're not interested in causing widespread disruption, but we are committed to ending the cycle of aggressive expansion that has prevented genuine galactic civilization. The session continued for hours as delegates struggled with the implications of humanity's revelations. Species that had built their power through military conquest found themselves facing obsolescence, while smaller civilizations saw unprecedented opportunities for genuine independence and development. As the formal session concluded, private negotiations began between individual species and the human delegation. The Vuldris were immediately interested in technology-sharing agreements that could revolutionize their economic capabilities. Several smaller species from the Collective Alliance requested security guarantees and defensive assistance. Even some members of the hegemony's client species began reaching out through back channels, exploring the possibility of alternative arrangements that didn't require submission to Korth military authority. Ambassador Vasquez found herself in the unique position of reshaping galactic politics through carefully structured diplomatic agreements. Each conversation represented another step toward the new model of galactic civilization that humanity had been planning for decades. The most significant development came from an unexpected source. Commander Vex Tal, the Zephyrian officer whose attack had triggered the current crisis, requested a private meeting with the human delegation. Ambassador, Vex Tal spoke through his translator, his demeanor vastly different from the arrogant confidence he had displayed at Cerberus Station. I've been authorized by the Imperial Council to discuss potential arrangements between the Zephyrian Empire and humanity. The meeting represented a fundamental shift in galactic power structures. The Zephyrian Empire, terror of 43 worlds, was seeking accommodation with a species they had attacked less than a week earlier. What kind of arrangements? Vasquez asked. The Empire is prepared to acknowledge human territorial claims and enter into mutual non-aggression agreements, Vex Tal replied. In exchange, we request access to human defensive technologies that could help us maintain security without requiring continued expansion. The proposal was remarkable for what it represented. The Zephyrian Empire was essentially requesting assistance in transitioning from an aggressive expansionist power to a stable territorial state. It was exactly the kind of transformation that humanity had hoped to encourage throughout the galaxy. We're certainly willing to discuss such arrangements, Vasquez agreed. However, any agreement would need to include provisions for the independence of species currently under Zephyrian control. The negotiations that followed would reshape the political landscape of local space. Within days, multiple species would declare independence from imperial control, backed by human security guarantees and defensive assistance. The era of aggressive expansion was ending, replaced by a new model of voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. As Ambassador Vasquez watched the final delegates leave Harmony Prime, she reflected on the magnitude of what had been accomplished. Humanity had not just revealed their hidden capabilities, they had used those revelations to fundamentally transform galactic civilization. The species that had spent decades hiding their true strength from aggressive neighbors had emerged as the architects of a new era of galactic peace and cooperation. The attack on a single training facility had triggered changes that would benefit countless civilizations throughout local space. 6 months after the Cerberus Station incident, Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood in the observation deck of humanity's newest diplomatic facility, Unity Station, watching the most remarkable sight in galactic history. Ships from 17 different species moved in careful coordination.